Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining in with us today. My name's Lindsay Russo, and this is Amber Thurner, and we're both a part of the Missions.Me executive team. And we're just excited to start this conversation about foster care and adoption, and just giving some really helpful information for anyone who might be interested in starting this journey. We're just here as moms to have a conversation around this beautiful and also challenging topic of fostering and adoption. Something that our entire organization is completely obsessed with right now. We've spent the last several months diving into foster care and adoption in America and the systems that have been created to solve this problem. It's been an incredible but honestly shocking and emotionally moving time of learning. As of today, there are over 40,000 kids in the foster care system in Southern California alone, many of which are bouncing from home to home or stuck in a group home, with very little hope of ever finding a family.
In fact, many of these kids, as they get older and age out of the state care, are faced with massive obstacles to build a successful life for themselves. We see kids faced with these massive open doors into many of the social issues that are destroying so many lives, that not just in LA, but across the nation. A few stats for you that blew me away when I first heard them. 40% of teens who age out of foster care will experience homelessness within the first 2 years. 85% of youth recovering in sex trafficking raids in LA County were in the foster care system. 80% of current prison inmates have spent time in the foster care system, and almost 1/3 of 18 to 20-year-old girls in child welfare system have been raped at least at one point in their life. 56% of 21-year-old women who were formerly in child welfare system are mothers. 69% of young adults who have aged out of the child welfare system have been out of work at some point within the last year. And finally, there's only 3% chance for children who have aged out of the foster care system to earn a college degree at any point in their life.
And I just want to introduce some of my friends that are going to share with us today. This is RYAM. She is a foster and adoptive mom, and you also have started this amazing organization, the Wild and Whimsy Foundation, which gives back to foster care through a clothing line for kids, which is so cool. Amazing. Yeah, so fun. And this is Pastor Jen Toledo of Expressions 58. She is a huge foster care advocate. We're gonna call her an expert. I don't know that you'd call yourself an expert, yes, but she is an expert, super knowledgeable, and is just gonna answer some really, great questions that some of you might be having. And this is Pastor TERAN of Zion San Clemente Church, who is currently fostering right now and is also expecting her first little one. So we're just, this is so, we just want to be as real and organic as we can to answer some just basic questions that people who are thinking about foster care, thinking about adoption, and you just really don't know where to start. We just want to answer some basic questions and just kind of tell your journey, tell your story. And I feel that a lot of people will be able to find themselves in your story and in your journey. So basically, just to kick it off, TERAN, for you, what really led you to start looking into becoming a foster parent?
Yeah, our story was actually pretty different. From a really young age, I always had that sense in my spirit that I wanted to foster and eventually to adopt. And I told my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, and he's like, okay, cool, like maybe someday way in the future. But I really feel like for us, foster care and adoption, in a sense, like God chose us for that. So to give a little backstory, my parents actually adopted 2 kids when I was 18. So they were 2 and 3 at the time. They're 11 and 12 now. And their mom, a couple years ago, had another son. And at around 10 months old, she wasn't doing well. And that child got placed into the foster care system. And so insert John and I, my husband, and my parents are in their 50s. And they're like, we can't take a 10-month-old. And everyone's kind of looking at each other. And I'm like, yes, this is our moment. And John's like, no, this isn't our this is crazy. We're not going to do this. And so I just said, well, we have to be on the same page. I'm not going to say yes to this if you're not in. So I'm like, let's just take time to pray about it. We took the night, and the next morning, John was just like, yes, like God just dealt with him. And we jumped in. We had a 10-month-old on our doorstep the next day. It was within 24 hours. So we hadn't done any of the certification, any of the classes, but we just said yes. And I'm so amazed, truly, how that one yes from John like changed the course of our life, and has just made an impact on us, and obviously we hope an impact on these children's lives. So it's a little bit of the start. Yeah.
And Hiam, what was your kind of journey to fostering and then ultimately adopting?
Yeah, so much like TERAN, since I was a little girl, I always knew I wanted to adopt. And originally I thought, I'm going to move to Africa and be a missionary and adopt a baby. And so that was kind of my dream. But then after getting married and moving out, and then my sister went off to college and my brother moved out as well, my mom kind of got this empty nest syndrome and began fostering. And so she started fostering teenagers, because they are usually the ones that they have the hardest time finding homes for them. And it just became her passion and her ministry. And so in the last 20 years, she's fostered over 37 children.
Incredible. Wow.
So one of the days, my husband and I were married about 5 years, and then one day she called us and said, I'm gonna go pick up a baby. And we were actually so mad at her. We're like, what? You should not go get a baby. 2 of her girls were pregnant. And so she said, no, she's so cute. You guys have to come and meet her. So my husband and I went over, and the moment we saw her, we just both knew in our hearts. We don't want her to get stuck in this system, and we want, if we can take her, we're gonna take her. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what began our process. And so right away we got certified, and she came to live with us. And then we found out we were pregnant with our other daughter. And so, and then after almost 2 years, the adoption process was finalized, and she's been with us ever since.
Wow. Yeah, that is so cool. And actually we were speaking earlier, and you actually grew up in a family who fostered as well. So you want to share part of that story for you?
Yeah, 2 of my siblings are adopted, and my mom did foster care growing up. And so I grew up with my foster sister in my room all through like middle school and high school. And it had a huge impact on me. Actually, that even started with me as a kid finding out about this girl in my school who was in an abusive foster family. And I just was I would come home every day and just cry and talk to my mom about it and be like, we have to do something. And my mom was a single mom, and she was just like, okay. And so she went through the process, got licensed, and we brought her to live with us. And she's been part of our family ever since. Yeah, but it's hugely shaped me, too.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And how old were you when they came to live with you?
Probably 13.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then all the way through college, and I mean, even now she's in her 30s, but she's still, family and holidays and always with us, and just kind of the anchor for her, and I'm so grateful. Wow. Yeah.
I think that actually is something that's hugely on the mind of moms and people who maybe already have biological children that are considering bringing a foster child into their home, because you wonder, okay, are my kids going to be okay, and how is this going to affect my family? But the 2 of you are now years down the road in that process, and just seeing that now you are both advocates for foster care because it so changed you. So you still have small children. What do you feel like having your daughter as a part of your family through foster care? What do you think that that's done for your biological children, the way that they view, the world as far as fostering and adoption is concerned?
Well, we've always been very open as a family and talking about how God makes families in different ways. So when my girls were little, I would always say some of our babies are tummy babies and some of our babies are heart babies. And so when they were little, it was so funny. They would be like, oh, I remember when I was a baby and I would go down to your tummy and like meet my sister, and they would make believe. And so it's always been a part of the conversation of God makes families in so many different ways, and we talk about how the Lord has adopted us as well, and how adoption is just a part of our story as believers and as a part of our story is as we're living out our life here on earth. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Tummy babies and heart babies. Because really, like, the way that we raise our kids is like, they should not know any different. You know, they should just see, oh, this is my family. And it doesn't really matter, like, how it began, but family is family. So I love that so much. TERAN, for you, what do you feel like God is teaching you through this process? Because I know you've had some highs and lows for sure. So what do you feel like you guys are learning as a couple, or you as a mom are learning through this process?
And you even had to kind of go through this twice.
Right.
So how was that process?
I mean, I'll be honest, it was super hard. I think one of the greatest things that I've learned is that, like, foster care is not about me. Like, it's truly not about me. It's not about growing my family. It's about helping to be part of the solution. And if you
that is so good what you just said. Because it's just not.
a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It's really needed.
It is.
Yeah.
And we have like a phenomenal Christian lawyer who's just like really helped us every step of the way. And he said something that just stuck with me. And he said, if we truly love the broken, like not just say we love them, but like we're willing to get in there and get messy, then God will entrust us with the next generation. And I'm like, yes, like how can I not say yes to that? That's what I want. And so I've just realized, like, this is so not about me. This is so much bigger than me. And the second it becomes about me, like, it is just such an uphill battle. But I've learned I'm capable, and we're capable of so much more than we think. And God's constantly kind of asking us to, like, level up. You know, like, what initially seemed like a huge yes was just, like, our initial yes into foster care and yes to a baby. And now we're like, okay, what's the yes now? Is it multiples? Is it teens? And so I think I'm just learning, like, we can do hard things, and it's not about us, but God empowers us by His Spirit to do things like beyond our pay grade, and the outcome is truly so rewarding. Like, it's so beyond rewarding.
Gosh, I'd love to piggyback off that just a little bit if I can. One of the things that I tell my kids all the time is, like, actually, none of you belong to me. All of you belong to God, and He's entrusted me with your lives here on earth. And so I love that it isn't about us, even though, yes, we're growing our family. At the end of the day, it's God has a plan for each and every one of these babies that He's entrusted to us. And our goal, right, as moms, as parents, is just to hope that we can do the best that we can for them, whether they're biological or not. So yeah, I love that.
Question, with all the unknowns, if you're going into fostering, adopting, there's so many unknowns, so much just kind of scared to even walk down that path, or what kind of just made you guys, how did you mentally deal with kind of all those questions that you had, and how did you kind of get over them?
Yeah, because it seems like you both jumped right in without totally processing it. It was more like a,
They weren't even licensed.
it was like, yeah, I'll do it. Whereas some people are probably researching and trying to make plans and trying to, you know, but there's so much fear involved.
Totally. Yeah, I'll speak into that a little bit. I think initially it was probably easier for maybe us because it was like so on the fly and we're like, yes. But when you get a little time to think about it, you're like, what am I saying yes to? And so I feel like our second time around, after we had our first foster son for a couple months and then he reunified, and after that, that was kind of our time to say, like, what was that? You know, was that a one-time thing, or is this something we're going to step into? And that's for us where probably like the fear kind of set in and the what ifs. And we just said, if we can play a part in even one child's story, no matter what it costs us, we're going to say yes to that every day. And so we just made that shift. And we've kind of like lived with this saying, live in today, but fight for tomorrow, which helps us be present because there are so many unknowns. Like, I mean, I'm so in love with our foster son. And if I go too far in the future and thinking that he's not going to be with us, even though that might not be the end goal of foster care, like, it wrecks me. So I think live in today, enjoy the moment, and fight for him for his tomorrow, whatever that looks like. And that really allows me to live in peace and really truly, like, God hasn't given us that spirit of fear, you know, like that's not from Him. And just reminding ourselves, like, we're empowered and we don't have to live under that fear, and we can do hard things.
Yeah.
That's so good. Pastor Jen, what would you say about some of these kids who are in the foster care system of Los Angeles who might be, I guess, termed harder to place. They're not as young, or they might have been in multiple homes. But they're so worthy of a wonderful childhood and a wonderful upbringing from an amazing family. I know there might be a lot of fear surrounding, oh, this is not a baby. This is a child that might have baggage or emotional hurts and things that they've, unimaginable things that they might have experienced. But that's just the reality of foster care, because it's not like you're picking, necessarily like this child for your family, so to speak. So what would you say to a family who is opening their home to one of these kids who might be older or might, have a little bit of a story? How could you maybe dispel some fear along, with that story?
Yeah, I think I would start by saying, encouraging families to actually go down that process of beginning to consider these kids, because really the kids that are most vulnerable in our system are these ones that don't get placed, right? They're ones that are a little bit harder because they're sibling sets. When you hear their stories, you're like, they just didn't want to be, they've lost everything. Right. They just don't want to be separated from their sibling,
You got to make it personal.
Yeah.
Imagine,
So to imagine to being separated from your sibling, is awful, right? But then that puts them in a category of harder to place. Teens or kids with disabilities, there are challenges, but a couple things. One, as believers, we believe in the redemptive work of Christ. We know, I know for myself, I know one of the big things, many times families are afraid of, or do they have, it's a hot topic, is do they have history in sexual abuse? How is that going to affect my bio kids? And I start to, and I think, and I know that's very real, right? At the same time, some of my very closest friends were sexually abused as children. And they're these amazing, incredible people, changing the world, And so we're not defined by those things. And so I think understanding the reality that foster care and adoption is hard and holy work, and it requires radical sacrificial love. It's seeing the gold in the child, it's really showing up for the least of these. This is true religion. This is what the kingdom is about. This is what the gospel is about. This is who we are as the church. And so I know that it's scary, but there's also a lot of incredible resources, which I don't know if you guys have kind of tapped into some of those, but there are so many just resources and support networks to help these kids, so you're not doing it by yourself. There's a lot out there to really help these kids process their trauma. I always think, I don't know, it's I'm like you, I was, I actually did go to Africa for a couple years and was wanted to adopt every child I met, that's totally my story, but at the same time, at least for California, it always blows my mind. I'm the state is literally helping us and even paying us to do what God has called us to do.
Exactly. Because, one of the biggest myths is I'd love to do that, but I don't have any extra finances, or I'm tapped out as it is with my own however many children and family. You want to
let's hit on that because I agree. People talk about that all the time. The reality is it's not going to cost you absolutely anything. Right. Absolutely anything. You will be trained through a foster care agency or the county. You will, be fully, all of that gets looked after. When you receive a child into your home, you will be, you'll receive a monthly stipend, and the state of California, if you adopt that child, will continue to pay that stipend all the way until that child is an adult. It's incredible.
And I never even knew that. When I heard about it, or when I would even think in this process, I thought it would cost a fortune to
their counseling, all of anything, their therapy they might need, any extra school support, that gets fully covered by the state. We just get to show up in love.
That's right.
It's pretty incredible.
The more I get to, it becomes more clear, and the more we get to the root of this issue, I really realize the answer is us. Yes. The answer is moms. The answers, especially if you're connected to a church, faith-based community, we are the answer to solve this LA problem, this nation problem, and it's the church. It really is the church when it comes to healing and just healing of the heart and emotional and trauma and stuff like that. It really is us. And
I agree. I don't know if people realize this, but there are over 40,000 kids in foster care in Southern California. Right. LA County alone has over 35,000. Right. the system is so overburdened and the state doesn't have solutions. You know, it's like just trying to tread water. And it really is the church. It's the church showing up. This is what adoption is, our business. It's what we believe in. It's like what we're all about, you know, and it's so kingdom. And so I agree. You know, for me, one of the things that like really rocked my world and got me on this foster journey, when we started pastoring in LA, I sat down with LA County and DCFS and was talking to them, and they said, you know, one of the hardest communities to get to foster kids at that time, this was like maybe a decade ago, was middle and upper class Christian families.
Wow.
Because they were afraid.
Wow.
And they said, you know, we can get people in poverty to do foster care. We can get Christians who maybe live in the hood and don't have much going, like all these challenges, they'll do foster care. But stable families were the hardest at the time. And I just wept.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, we have to change this scenario. We have to change this narrative because this is what we're called to do. We have, you know, the resources. What these kids need is stability. They are, you know, they need family. They need just, I mean, and even statistically, we know just if any kid will have one present adult in their life, it dramatically changes statistics for them of outcomes in their future. You know, whether they'll end up in all these awful things is if they had one present adult who loved them. And this is who we are, right? Like,
I often say to people, perhaps you don't feel called to foster or adopt, but the truth is, as a believer, we are called to do something to care for them. So whether that is coming alongside families that have fostered or are fostering or fostering to adopt, it's our responsibility. And we are going to one day meet the Lord and He'd say, hey, what did you do for the least of these? Hey, when I said take care of the orphan, what did you do? And so you know, so many people feel like, oh my gosh, that's so overwhelming. And I say, just start small. Start by finding an organization that it resonates with your heart, speaks to your heart, and maybe make a little contribution. Or there's so many avenues. You could be a CASA worker. You could do so many different things where you can actually come alongside a child and perhaps not take them in, but take them in your spirit and in your heart and do the journey with them.
Yeah, I was going to ask for just the person who's thinking, I could never foster because I would get too attached. Kind of speak into what would you tell that mom to just kind of encourage, ease their...
I think I mean, kind of what I said earlier, these kids, our children are not ours anyway. They belong to God. And so that would be like saying, oh, I'm afraid of having a biological child and get so attached and then something were to happen to that child. It's just, it's counterintuitive to what God's called us to do, is that they don't belong to you anyway. So that, you know, that's how I look at it. And in the process, we're you know, our family's in the process right now, again, of getting certified to foster. We sat down with our kids, our 4 kids, and said, listen, we want to do this right now. The Lord's just saying, we're going to foster again. And they all were like, no, Mommy, we want to adopt and keep the baby. And I'm like, listen, if God's will is for us to keep the baby, we will. But if not, we still, it doesn't matter whether we keep the baby or not. We have to be a family for the baby. And so even as children, they understand that. They're like, oh, we understand that, Mommy. Because if we don't say yes, maybe that baby won't have somewhere to go. And so that's what I would say, honestly, is they're not yours anyway.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we kind of hit on this earlier, but it brings up a really good point, is that the goal of the county their primary goal is to reunify children with their biological families. And so you're stepping in as somebody to love and support the child as well as bio-parents and praying for restoration, right? And then you're available, you know, and can be at that safety net if restoration isn't possible. But 3 out of 5 kids will reunify. And so going into that, we have to have that kind of mindset of, hey, what an incredible opportunity that I get to love this family and be present and be Jesus to them in their most desperate moment. And getting ourselves out of it, because love doesn't consider self, right? And it's hard because as a human, especially as a mom, right? You're just like, you know, you just want to just, you know, I want to protect you, I want to keep you, you know, but understanding like this is actually radical love looks like laying your life down for somebody else, right?
I would say I'm kind of like walking through this right now, like just hanging in the middle, you know? I mean, the point is to get too attached. Like, attachment is so good for children. It's so good for them. And so when you see your role as loving them and getting attached to them for them and not for you, we call our foster son our son, because we want him to know, like, he has rights to everything in our house, even if it's just for a couple months. Like, you belong in this family, and our words have power, so we speak that over him. But at the same time, we go do visits with his biological father, and we speak life over his dad, and we build bridges with his dad, and not, demonizing him and making him like the enemy. Like, the enemy's the enemy, and we're trying to build bridges with his family. And we've just had an incredible time, especially with this foster son, seeing like God's redemptive work in his parents' life. And we've had an opportunity to literally like lay hands and pray with his dad. And I've had a social worker with us saying, I've never been a part of, a visitation where this has happened. And so, our role, yes, is to love the child, but it's also so much bigger. Like, we're impacting social workers and parents and grandparents and other siblings, and it's truly an opportunity for generational impact. So it's super hard, but it's also so beautiful, and it is like the work of the kingdom, like you said.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's amazing. Wow. Pastor Jen, so let's say, just like you've done with your church, how you've become this huge outpost for families who want to be involved but may not be able to bring a child into their home specifically right now, but they want to be able to wrap their arms around a family. What would you say to the family or to the person who's listening that's like, something's tugging on my heart, I know right this moment isn't the time for me to bring a child into my home, but I want to do something? How would you direct someone who's feeling that way?
Totally. Well, and I think she hit it so brilliantly, right? Where it's like, nobody gets to say I'm not called to foster care. Like, as a believer, this is what true religion is. This is what it looks like, and so we all play a part. And I think that's the important thing is, I think so often we think I'm not ready to foster or adopt, so maybe one day, not realizing how valuable each one of our parts are right now. There's so many ways, to get involved. There's such a need for mentoring. There's such a need for advocacy, so many different aspects. One of the easiest things to do is, statistically we know, foster families who don't have wraparound support statistically will not continue for longer than 2 years. They just won't. It's hard. Most will stop. And so just having a support network, that might look like, what we do at Expression is we build a support team around every foster family. And so they have a team of 10 people who provide meals.
Wow, so not just a couple, a
10
whole team.
people. They are a team, and they handle it. They, when there's a new placement, they shower them. They just provide special things, not just for the foster child, but also for the bio kid, just the whole family as a unit. Helping with school pickups, helping with childcare, helping with, some of them get licensed to do some of the visits with the parents, just because that can be time consuming. And so there's so many things that singles can do. As a single, you can actually foster and adopt. And I think sometimes people think, I have to have a big house.
Yeah. So what is the requirement? Just
So
even
what would be age limits?
Basically, the county is pretty open because they're desperate. So as long as you are over 18 years old and as old as can physically take care of a child, that's literally the qualifications. You don't have to have a ton. You have to be financially stable, so you're not trying to live off of the stipend you're getting from the child. Financially stable, as long as you have a spare bedroom that the child can be in, unless you're taking in a baby. Under the age of 2, they can be in your bedroom. At least for LA County. I don't know if Orange County is the same. But, and so, there's actually so much flexibility. We have tons of singles who are in our community who are fostering, who've adopted, and then, you can wrap these families. And we've seen such incredible, even like this bio family, you're talking about how you guys have ministered to that father. That's incredible. One of the families in our church was caring for 2 foster kids. who the mother was an 18-year-old in the foster system herself. So they were taking care of the foster kids. They just kept working with mom, loving with mom. She got her kids back, and now they're just like family with the whole family. And so, you know, they still help on the weekends. They still have them all over. So it really is bigger, you know, than I think we even know.
I kind of want to ask both of you a question. So what we're really getting at is the biggest blocker of families doing, you know, stepping into this foster care lifestyle is just fear. Fear. It's fear of the unknown, fear of, you know, what if this and what if that. So I guess I'll ask you first. Obviously, this whole journey has been completely worth it. So what would be like your best piece of encouragement for families who are just, they might feel the pull towards it, but they're just full of fear? So how would you encourage someone in that place?
Gosh, I mean, I think everything in life, fear is a liar. And that's in every area of your life, right? So I guess, I don't know, I think if my fear dictated my every decision that I made in my life, I would have lost out on one of the best things that's ever happened to me and to my family. And I don't want to get emotional. I can't think of my life without my daughter, and I can't think. I'm more afraid for these children than I am for myself, and the things that they're going through. And I know, just speaking, up growing into adults that become homeless or are incarcerated or are trafficked, or I mean, it's just horrific what happens to the kids. And so for me, that's what I tell myself. The fear, particularly right now, as we're stepping into that, I'm like, Lord, I'm done with diapers. Like, I'm getting a groove with my 4 kids, and now you're like wanting this from us. And of course I'm afraid, but I'm not gonna let my fear rob me of what God has for me and for my family, and ultimately for what He has for the child that He's preparing for us. So,
wow, that's incredibly selfless, but also so encouraging, because like you said, like, you would have missed out on one of the greatest things that's ever happened to you if you let fear, you know, stand in the way. And now your whole family is learning how to do this journey together, just for saying one simple yes, which I love that so much. What about you? What would you say to a family, or to a mom, or to a single or to an older couple who's just, you know, has love to give, but has a lot of reservations due to fear? What would you say?
Or
to
on
them?
the fence of debating whether or not they would.
I mean, first off, I would say, like, that's so legitimate. That's real. Like, I am not going to pretend like this isn't scary, even having done it. And then the second time, you'd think you'd be like, I'm ready, but you're still like, oh my gosh, like, this is too big for me. Like, this is so big. But God gives us the strength to do really hard things. And I mean, exactly what you're saying about your daughter is how I feel about our foster son. Like, I cannot, with both of them, I can't imagine my life without them and what I would have missed out on. Not only getting to be a blessing, but like the blessing that they are and were to our family. And so the joy, like, doesn't even compare to the hardship. I mean, it is so hard. I'm not going to lie. It's so hard, and it's a huge sacrifice, and it will mess your life up in the best way possible. Like, I'm not going to lie. It totally screws up your plans, but it is like the greatest thing that my husband and I have said yes to, and we have never once regretted it. And so I think that's going to fuel us for all of our future yeses.
When going through the whole process of being like certified for it and stuff like that, how long did that take you guys? I know you've said a lot of times that feels so overwhelming, that how do you keep going? Because you're getting so much information at one time.
Well, and I think that we have to keep this in mind, and people need to be aware of this going through this process. Like, you're going to be working in a very broken system, and you need to understand that. Like, the system is messed up from A to Z, and you need to understand that and be there to also love the people trying to work a broken system. And so going into it, you can't just expect that it's just going to be this like, oh, it's so easy. And, you know, it's complicated, it's hard. But I also have to, I mean, shout out to Love Has No Limits, because this is an incredible opportunity. We're trying to simplify for people the process, right? So it's like we're trying to answer those questions. We're going to handhold people in the process. I wish this would have been here when my husband and I went through the process ourselves, because I was just like, dear God, this is so much, right? Yeah. So you have to be committed to a little bit of crazy, but at the same time, I think we have a huge opportunity here with Love Has No Limits to really help people step by step through the process and take some of that fear away. And everybody's different. Every county's different, you know, depending on where people are. Right. But this is also, I think, this is exactly why the church needs to rise up, right? Because not only do we need to help take in these kids, but it helps to relieve the burden on a system so that it can begin to heal itself. And so
the fact that it's broken is even more reason for
100%.
us to get involved.
And so it's easy to step back and point and be like, that's a mess. It's really easy to do that, right? But it's another thing to come in and like, okay, like, you know, I'll take some of these kids, I will help. I'm gonna build a relationship in this system and help be hope. And we begin to transform it. And I mean, how powerful for, I mean, LA County alone, just to watch, you know, transformation take place because the church showed up.
Yeah. And I was telling her, growing up in the church, I realized I never even heard about this. And I feel like this is the root of so many issues, that if we would just begin to rise up and say, hey, we're solving X, Y, and Z by just making awareness of this one massive issue. This is the root of so many things.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because the reality is, I mean, I don't know if people are aware of this, so many issues come back to foster care, right? So like 40% of kids coming out of the system, 40% will be homeless within 2 years. 80% of inmates in California have been in the foster care system. When they raided, you know, did a human trafficking raid in LA County, my backyard, 85% of the kids that were rescued came out of the foster care system. Like when you start looking at the statistics of, you know, homelessness, incarceration, poverty, teen pregnancy, all those things, literally this is the path, and it's especially for these kids that are hard to place. Because people are more likely to show up and take, you know, an easier child, but it's the ones who get stuck in the system that those are really the statistics for, and those are really the kids we have to fight for. You know, as believers, knowing that they have destiny and purpose, it's like, oh my gosh, that could have been any of us.
What is that age group that you would say is the tough,
hardest to place? Well, 9 to 18 there's the most, like for LA County, that is the most amount of kids that are in the system are 9 to 18. The highest percentage of kids are in that age group. So it's really that, you know, that age group, and kids who've maybe been there a while, so now they've got tons of compound trauma.
So some of these kids, just because I'm not even aware, where are they living while they're waiting on a foster family? Like some of these kids who are in the 9 to 18 range.
What happens is because there's just a lack of homes, they get put into these just mass group homes where they just get introduced to and abused at a whole other level. Like there's just so many layers, and so it just becomes, you know,
basically orphanages in our backyard.
Yes. Yep.
And state run, I'm assuming.
They are state run. I mean, there are some privately run ones as well, but yeah, and it's brutal. Like once a kid is in a group home, it's almost kind of like we've given up even trying. And so there are thousands of kids in Southern California that are eligible for adoption right now. That's right. And honestly, even in talking with the county, their complaint is people only want like a baby, or they only want an easy child, and they're like, but we have thousands of kids that are just desperate. You know, they just come with this cute little sibling, and they just come with, you know, like whatever. And so I think being mindful of that, and that's where we really get to rise up.
Really, when you hear statistics like that, you think, how is this happening? A, in America, but B, in my own backyard. I know we do a lot of work in third world countries, and we've seen with our own eyes like those statistics play out. But here we are in Southern California, in Orange County, in LA County, and these statistics are, I mean, they're daunting. I don't want to be negative, but they're daunting. And this system that is incredibly well funded. I mean, incredibly well funded. They're just not able currently to solve these issues because these kids are still broken. They're leaving the system broken. They need healing. They need resource. It's just not working. So could you just speak into that a little bit about why do you think that the system is just not working and fulfilling the needs for these kids?
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, these statistics are so overwhelming, right? But I think it comes back to our core need. Like, we're designed for family. Every human is designed for love and safety, the safety of family. And when you rip that out from underneath a child, like, it's like just taking the core out of their life. And it's like you just leave them so vulnerable to so many things. And so I think really when you look at this, I mean, first of all, our poor counties are so overburdened. They have so many, I mean, LA County alone, right, 35,000 kids, so many kids. It's so hard, it's so complicated. And the reality is they can't fix it. And this is where the church rises up. Right. This is what we do. We specialize in family, we specialize in adoption. Right. It's like what we believe, restoration, healing. We can call the gold out in people, we can love. I mean, this is what we're about, loving people back to life and showing up for people, you know? And so I just don't know that anybody else will ever be able to come close to doing what the church is already equipped and designed to do. And so to me, it's so clear, Christ in us is the answer. Christ in us is the answer to the foster care crisis in Southern California. And as we show up and we just show up with radical love and we're not intimidated by the messiness of the kids, by the, the things that are going to manifest because of their trauma and their hurt, and we just love radically, it begins to bring transformation. And when we show up and not just give up when it gets hard, because that's what happens a lot, and we just actually are there and continue to be there, powerful transformation begins to happen in their lives. And so, I mean, the reality is statistically, believers are twice as likely to adopt than non-believers. This is just something who we are. It's part of our DNA, and the church is the solution. And the reality is, just kind of off the cuff here, the county knows that. And the county is reaching out to the faith community and saying, we don't have solutions. I mean, I'm sitting in meetings all the time with the county where they're saying, we need the faith community to do what you guys do because we don't have the strategy and we don't have the solutions. And so there's just never been a better hour for the church to show up and be who we already are.
I think there's this whole image of having this neat, perfect, pretty life. Instagram shows us every day. But you're right, we are called to be in the mess. I mean, that's what we're, absolutely.
And I think that's where we come most alive. Really doing what we're created to do, because it's not just for those kids. Like, it's going to transform us. It's going to transform my entitled children. It's going to transform us. And so we, everybody benefits, and we take our place and do radical, and we love radically.
It's amazing. And that's where I think it's so key for single people, and I have a friend who just started fostering as well, but you can be, it's not even like, oh, I got to be a mom, but I can have this teenager and do the journey with her for the next couple of years before she's going to, age out of the system. And there's so many ways, again, to get behind these kids and to support. And you don't have to be like, oh, a family with an extra room to foster. It's that's another myth. You just need to be someone with a willing heart and space to put a teenager in there, right? That's the age that we're talking about right now, that, hey, I'm going to be your friend, your foster friend mom, and do the journey, or, and there are also amazing men who take in young boys. And I, just in doing the research as I've been building my foundation, thinking, oh my gosh, how incredible that this 30-something-year-old guy who's not ready to get married and have kids, but he wants to make a difference in the lives of other young men, and takes them in 2 or 3 at a time. It's to answer a little bit as well, if you're here in Orange County, you can actually become a certified foster parent within 30 days. And you go to an orientation, they give you these are the do's and don'ts, and the paperwork, there's quite a bit of paperwork that needs to be done. And you get fingerprints, and they do background checks on you to make sure, the kids are safe, and done. You're certified, and you can have a child placed.
And I think it's good for people to know there's kind of two paths with fostering. You either go through the county, which is typically quicker, or you go through an FFA, which is a foster care agency. And a foster care agency tends to like kind of help people a little bit more, walk with them, you know, and there's a variety of amazing foster care agencies that help people. So people have various options, and sometimes the county's a better fit, sometimes an FFA is a better fit. But even with what we're doing with Love Has No Limits, we're providing all those options for people. Yeah, even what she was saying about the wrap, kind of, you know, you can just show up in somebody's life. Like, we call that aunties and uncles are on the wraparound team, and they do everything from, one of ours is a musician, and she just helped, one of the foster girl her dream was to write and produce her own song, so she helped her to do that. Another girl, we did her quinceañera at our church, and my husband, you know, stepped in and danced with her and did kind of the whole father's spot, just helping her throw her quinceañera. You know, or we do like Christmas parties for a group home, and so there's different ways that you can really get involved in a meaningful way, even without having to, you know, bring them in your home.
We have a care community that has committed to us for a year, and they have just come alongside us, and there's couples, there's singles, and it's about 10 people who just said, we're gonna love you guys and support you. So they help us with babysitting, they give us 1 meal a week. I know, it's amazing. They are all certified for respite care, so if we want to go away for the weekend, they can watch our son overnight. And I can't tell you like how amazing it is to feel supported and to not feel like we're just over here on this island doing it alone. And so, I mean, all of those people, like they said yes to foster care too, in a certain way, and their yes is so important to help us run our race well and not get burned out. So.
And statistically, you know, for families like this who have a wraparound, 90% of them will continue to foster ongoing because they have support. I don't know, I mean, I don't want to do it without a support team, you know?
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, it does.
And if you couldn't do it yourself, but you wanted to get certified to help out a family, what is that? A couple-day process? Do you have to go through the full...
what degree you want to be involved. If you want to be able to just have the child for extended amounts of time, you would have to go through the full process. But there is respite care training. There is, and every FFA is a little bit different too on their qualifications. But so we have some aunties and uncles who, through just some fingerprinting, live scan, that kind of stuff, they're able to do, you know, every county is a little bit different, but I know LA County, it's like more than 48 hours. You can't leave them with somebody for more than 48 hours without them, you know, having a certain type of qualification. So, but yeah, I mean, just there's basic things you could do that just open up huge opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Anyone have any last before we wrap it up? Okay. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable, so real. I really feel like we have dispelled a lot of fear, a lot of myths, a lot of misconceptions. And I'm just so encouraged that so many people who are watching this are gonna find themselves in your stories. They're gonna see, I can do this, or we're totally, you know, we might feel fear, we might feel like we don't have what it takes, but just by watching and hearing your experiences, they're gonna be encouraged to just jump in and trust God. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like we need to be less fearful of getting a little messy and getting a little, you know, rolling your sleeves up and loving the unlovable or wrecking your own plans, but in the best way, you know, in the best way possible, just letting God just come in and wrap his arms around our families and anyone who's watching this, just letting God interrupt your life in the best way possible. So I'm so encouraged. I'm so grateful for you sharing. You guys are heroes. Today. Yeah, you really are. You are heroes. We're just here to find more people like you. Yes. And I really, really feel like we're gonna do that. So
for anyone watching this that is moved and want to start the journey towards giving a home to a child currently stuck in the system, we want to offer you a starting point. Love Has No Limits, in partnership with Pastor Jen and the County Welfare Champions across Southern California, has created a pathway to fostering and adopting with tons of support and community. We want to walk with you, we want to encourage you, we want to support you, and we want to wrap our arms around you as you begin this journey. So if you're interested, take the first step by visiting lovehasnolimits.com/home and complete the interest form. We will get you connected with the best organizations and support system in the city. If you are a pastor or an organization leader, we believe that this cause should be at the heart of your church, and we have all the tools to help you communicate this vision to your church and build a sustainable foster and adoption ministry that connects godly families with kids in need. For you, the same link, lovehasnolimits.com/home, and fill out the organization form.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We're so excited to start this journey with you.